everyone, and welcome back to Sunday Reads with Renee here at Simply Renee. My name is Renee, and today is July 12th as I film this for the segment, and that is because some things have taken an unexpected turn this past week, which delayed my filming. I currently live with my mother, and unfortunately, her health took a bit of a turn this week. She's been showing a lot of disorientation and confusion, and we rushed her to the ER Saturday afternoon, and she was diagnosed with an infection, which thankfully is being treated with antibiotics, and she's doing much better, thankfully. And as her health improves, we'll be able to bring her home hopefully on Monday or Tuesday. And she's got a good doctor behind her. A very excellent medical team, voted the best in Rhode Island, so we're very lucky to have that. And also, my father, brother, and I are there to give her as much support as possible. So we are hopeful that she'll be able to come home Monday and Tuesday, and she'll gain a full recovery. I didn't want to do a video here today just based on reading, and I decided to do it with a CBS News interview that I came across a few days ago, where the interviewers are interviewing a writer for The Atlantic who wrote a story on how the age of reading is on the decline. And the reason for that is pretty much what I've been seeing for a while now, even in different articles, as well as even here on YouTube through different YouTubers talking about it, where the reading crisis is a big deal. A lot of people are not reading. A lot of people can't read a full-length book. Some people can't read at grade level. But there's also the fact that it's on the decline, where people just aren't reading for enjoyment at all. And that's a big, serious thing that's happening in the country right now. And for me, that is a little bit of a personal thing. I'm someone that's never had much of a love for reading, despite what I display here, because as a kid in the 90s, I had a language learning process disorder. I'm not sure what they call it now, but this disorder enabled me to not really take in language properly and really understand a lot of things, even directions. And I really struggled with that, which is why I didn't have a big love of reading or even for enjoyment, even though I came across some stories that I did like and enjoy. And I have improved a lot lately. The reason I came back into a love of reading was when I was in a college literature class, and the instructor was great. A lot of short story form stories were really helpful to me in getting my love of reading back and the excitement in there. And ever since then, I've been a very vocarious reader compared to when I was a child, so I'm very happy with that. And it's a shame, too, when I read this article that people aren't reading even for enjoyment, because I've grown to have so much of a love for reading that I don't want to see people not love books or even read books or articles or anything like that, because I do think it's very important to have reading because it helps you with critical thinking, comprehension, keeping your brain active as well. So I do think this is an issue, and a lot of other people that I've come across feel the same way. But what this interview did touch on, which I thought was important, is the fact that when the writer of this article was doing their research, they ended up discovering that AI and shorter attention spans are affecting the reading enjoyment and how we really absorb information. And it's something that even I noticed as well, and I made a comment about it in my video on contemporary novels, which I'll leave a link in the description as well for you to see on that video. And I do think that is a reason why we're having some problems as well. The attention spans have gotten shorter compared to when I was a child in the 90s. AI and ChatGPT is doing a lot for us, but it is causing problems because a lot of people have now become so used to shorter form platforms and brief summaries that they're not really looking beyond completely or taking that opportunity to look beyond. And don't get me wrong, I like short form videos. I enjoy short form videos if it gives me that quick little release, if I don't really have enough time to go through something that's even 10 minutes long because I'm feeling a little tired or there's a bit of crunch time. But I do think doing that constantly does affect the brain and how you focus as well. In fact, they even touched on how having these shorter attention spans and these short form videos and AI and ChatGPT does make us not have as much focus as we should. And as anyone knows, reading does take a lot of focus. We have to read all the words, the paragraphs, dissect, really gain a lot of critical thinking, even peel back the layers of some things, whether they're themes or metaphors or something else in a story that really make us understand what the author is trying to tell us, what the characters are trying to say as well. And I think that is very important if you want to really think critically and dissect everything to really understand comprehension and even proper sentences. And speaking of proper sentences, they do mention how it seems that people aren't really able to string proper sentences together, because they do talk about how some people that the author writer interviewed is that they really have time reading books that are in old time English. They didn't want to read A Clockwork Orange by Anthony Burgess, which is in old time English, as they say, when it's actually not. And that was really something that was shocking to one of the interviewers because they could understand Dickens and Austen, but it's like this book came out in the 1960s. How can they not really understand it? Because if you do read it, you can comprehend and understand it. So it seems to be lack of focus, or they think something is so old that it's not going to be relatable. And sometimes it's because they're struggling to string proper sentences together. So I think that is very worrisome in a lot of ways. Some of them even say that AI made things too easy, which could very well be true. So I do think even though AI, ChatGPT, and even short form videos can be beneficial in some ways, it can affect us in a lot of negative ways as well. So that could be one of the reasons that this writer thinks reading is starting to go on decline. There isn't too much enjoyment, or some people may not want to read even older works, which still hold up very well today in some way, shape, or form, but they don't really want to read it because they think it's not relatable. At least that's what I was getting from some of this conversation that they were having in this interview. I do think it's very beneficial to read older works because I can really gain a lot from them. I read The Count of Monte Cristo just this year, and I could understand it perfectly well. And it's been a long time since I've read A Clockwork Orange, but I could understand it fine as well. And I do think it's a shame that some of us are kind of reluctant to do it because we think it's in old-timey English when it actually isn't. And even one of the interviewers said that one of the reasons they could really try and grasp a little bit more might be reading a classic in combination with a modern novel, which could very well be true. I was part of a book club on literary pairings where we read a classic work which had a lot of interesting themes, and we read a modern work which had similar themes, and then try to combine and have a discussion on what was different, whether it was in old-timey English or just contemporary English. And I think it was very important to do that. And I do think classic works can bring things out of you. And I do think they don't have as bad old timey English as we think. And I do think it's a shame that we don't really respond to that or think about that too much in terms of reading. In fact, I watched a video a while back on how someone read The Count of Monte Cristo, and it helped really improve their attention span. And I'll leave a link in the description so you can watch that video yourself. Another thing they also discussed was how people are now starting to choose more shorter, simpler works, which I could understand, not just due to the shorter attention spans and lack of focus, but also because we're on the go as well. Maybe we just want something to read that's enjoyment, but shorter and simpler for us to understand without having to really go into complete critical thinking if we're not really in the mood to do that at the moment. And in a way, I can understand that. Sometimes I've read short stories just to kind of satisfy my reading pleasure if I didn't really want to read something that was 300 pages. And I also read articles in magazines, even though the author does say that in this article, when she researched it, the article reading is on the decline a little bit too. But basically, I can understand the shorter, simpler works that people are choosing. I myself do recommend novellas as well as short story collections here on this channel because it can satisfy your reading and can really help you engage in a short story that is shorter and a little simpler and easier to help you focus. If you don't have a lot of time on your hands or you're struggling with that lack of focus, that can be beneficial to keeping your reading going without having to think too much in terms of what this 300-page book is saying. And it's something that I even do now. I read Small Boat for the spring season, and it was only a little over 100 pages, but I could understand it fine. It got to the point of where it needed to go. It wasn't my personal favorite one, but I thought it was engaging enough to really satisfy my reading after I had just read big full-length books, including The Count of Monte Cristo. So that was a little bit of a break for me after reading such a big, thick book that I did enjoy, was very engaged in. But again, big book of over 1,000 pages. Another thing she does talk about too is how article reading is on the decline, which I think is a shame. Last year I did a video on how magazines are a way of going beyond just reading. So instead, if you don't want to read a book or a novella or a short story, reading a magazine article can be beneficial for your reading needs if you don't have a lot of time in your hands, or even if there is a lack of focus at the moment. And so reading different articles is good. It can help you gain some information. It can help you gain some knowledge as well. I recommended the ones I read. I read the Smithsonian Magazine. I even read Alfred Hitchcock Mysteries and Ellery Queen Magazine Mysteries as well, which have shorter form works that really get my reading in when I don't feel like reading a 300-page book and I just want to read something for enjoyment, or I'm just curious about something. So magazines can be very beneficial in that. The newspaper can as well, or even just reading an article online with some information that is appealing and interesting and something that you might get some enjoyment out of as well. So I do think the fact that even article reading is on the decline, as she researched that, really does say something about where we are right now, but I do think we can turn it around. And the reason I think we can turn it around is just by picking up a book or a magazine article or some form of something that can help us get the enjoyment of reading. There's a lot of videos, even here on YouTube, on people discussing why it is that they got back into a reading. And as I mentioned earlier, one of the things that helped me get back into a reading was simply just going to that college literature class, which made it fun and enjoyable and made me engaged. And there's also the fact that I'm now picking out books just for myself. Something that was mentioned in this interview was how some people might struggle with reading because they're assigned a book that might not be appealing to them or just feels like work. And I do think that is a shame, but it's also understandable because even I struggled with that as a teenager, where sometimes I feel like I had to just read something because it was there and I had to do it because, of course, it's an assignment, matters with your grade and everything. So you got to go out there and read that book and have it matter for your grade. But as a result, it can kind of bring the reading enjoyment down a bit because it's not something you enjoy. You feel like you have to read it rather than you wanting to read it. And to be clear, I'm not saying don't read that book that's assigned to you. You should definitely read that book that's assigned to you because it is part of your class, your homework, and is important to your grade. But I do think that also does kind of put things in a way of reading declinement in some ways. And so something that I would suggest at least is, yes, read that assigned book because you need to, because it's important to your grade, but also find something that you enjoy on the side in terms of reading. Maybe if you want to pick up that short story that you've always wanted to read and you enjoy and think you will enjoy, pick that up in combination with reading the book that is assigned to you. So that way you can get kind of that enjoyment out of it without feeling like you're having to put all your reading on decline. So for me, this was an interesting interview to watch and dissect because I do think it is important that we understand a lot about the reading crisis and what's happening right now. I do think it is important to read. One of the things that was always very beneficial, at least when I was a kid, despite these struggles with reading, was that my parents engaged with my brother and I with reading stories and different ones, whether that was picture books or even other books that were children's books, but they weren't picture books. And that can be very helpful as well. My brother has a 4-year-old son who loves and enjoys reading, and him and his wife encourage reading all the time. So I always get my nephew 2 books for his birthday as well as for Christmas. Some things that he likes. Some of it is classic works like Frederick or Lyle, Crocodile. And sometimes it's newer books that have come out over the last few years, such as The Last Stop on Market Street. So I do think that can be very beneficial for a lot of parents and kids to have that bonding moment, but also engage reading and encouraging it. And I'm a kid from the 90s, so I remember reading Rainbow, and so many people got enjoyment out of that. And even as I come across people who grew up with reading Rainbow, they have nothing but positive memories because it really helped them engage with reading and really enjoy it. And unfortunately, I don't have kids, so I'm unsure of what's happening right now with reading or different types of reading programs on TV. But if you're someone that maybe doesn't own a TV or perhaps doesn't have some type of reading program on a TV you can think of, I would recommend the library. There's Story Hour, there's book recommendations there, so that can help get kids engaged in reading as well. And anything else you'd like to suggest, please do so in the comments below. I would love to hear all discussions. This concludes the video, though. I wish I could talk a little bit more about it, but as I mentioned earlier, the stuff going on with my mom has my mind on some other things, and this is something that I did kind of sporadically last minute to try and get a video out here. So unfortunately, it's a little uneven, but I really appreciate everyone who's watching this video, and will, of course, watch that interview as well in the link description, because I do think it is a very important one to watch and have discussion about. But anyone here who's watched this video or understand what's going on in the world with the reading crisis, please let me know in the comments. Do you agree with me? Not agree with me? Do you think there's a crisis? No crisis? If you think there is a problem with it, what would you suggest we could do, or what do you think about it? Let me know in the comments below. I welcome all discussions as always. I thank everyone so much for tuning in. I understand, again, that this was a little bit of a sporadic video and an unusual one. I wish I could have practiced this a little bit more, but with everything going on, it's just been hard to concentrate even for myself. And thank you for being here, of course. I'm hoping my mom will get better. I do think she is going to get better. She's improving each day. And I really just thank you so much for being here always. And I'll be back with another video, of course, soon. And I thank you so much for tuning in. Please be sure to like, share, comment, subscribe, and click the notification bell. I'll see you next time. Bye.